Pygmalion and Galatea, Part 4. A silvery jelly began to ooze from her hands onto the ground. It wasn't long before the earth beneath them lost its opaqueness and became clear and translucent, revealing the layers of sediment arranged in tiers beneath their feet. By looking down, it became painstakingly obvious that in some areas sedimentation had failed to transpire. The strata appeared to extend to an abyssal depth in the earth, but Pygmalion noticed that in several pockets it had been anomalously inverted, twisted, or folded. Hundreds of thousands of large and hard-bodied vertebrae had been fossilized in these rocky blankets. There were both marine and terrestrial animals. A vast majority of them were prehistoric, belonging to ages bygone, and were now extinct. Some were clearly recognizable, while others looked like creatures that graced the annals of modern cryptozoology. The manner of their fossilization in the strata fostered the illusion that they had perished whilst being hurled around in a giant washing machine. Pygmalion gasped. "How did you do that?" "I have a way of making people see things," said Galatea, "especially things directly under them." "No doubt," said Pygmalion, getting on his knees. "Wow, look here. I can see all sorts of animals, coelacanth, trilobites, shrimp, frogs, birds, dolphins, mammoth, giant arachnids, bats, monkeys, prehistoric humans. A thick slice of the paleontological record right before your very eyes," said Galatea. "Undisturbed, I might add." "No kidding," said Pygmalion. "What's that weird-looking one that's very deep? It looks like a pregnant lizard." "That's Archaeopteryx." "The first bird." "That's what paleontologists think," said Galatea. "What do you see?" "Fossils." "What I meant to say is, what do you notice about the paleontological record?" Pygmalion stared at the Natural Museum, examining the strata, the positioning of the fossils within the strata, and the fossils themselves. "There's no continuity," he said. "I understand that there are gaps in evolutionary sequences, but seeing the whole thing up close and personal brings with it an undeniable conviction. There's no continuity between any of the great orders, at least none between the ones I can see." "Exactly," said Galatea. "Each order springs up out of the blue with no lasting or detectable prelude." "The animals don't appear to evolve into other animals, do they?" asked Pygmalion. "Their physical features don't change, they only get bigger. Either that, or they disappear altogether." "You're reading me," said Galatea. "Take a look at that cartilaginous fish from the Devonian period over there. That's roughly the time that amphibians are thought to have evolved. How is it possible for the amphibian to evolve from a fish? Did the fish all of a sudden realize that the seas had become overpopulated or hostile and decided it was time to seek out roads less traveled? Highly unlikely, I say. Not unless it spontaneously acquired the sentience of a shrewder life form." "Maybe it was an unconscious will," said Pygmalion. "An unconscious urge, an impulse devoid of any intelligence that drove it onto land." "Even if what you say is true, how does a cartilaginous arc become a pelvic girdle? How does a jointed leg with 4 or 5 digits form from pectoral fins? Do you see the problem now?" "Yeah, kind of," said Pygmalion. "Their anatomy is somewhat irreconcilable." "How did scales turn into feathers?" Galatea went on, pointing to the fossil of Archaeopteryx. "According to paleontologists, that's supposed to be the first bird, right?" "Yeah, an intermediary of dinosaurs and birds that supported the evolutionary link between them." "Did the predecessor of Archaeopteryx all of a sudden wake up one morning and think to itself, 'You know what, guys? There's too much danger and competition down here on the rainforest floor, so I'm going to grow me some wings and fly off into the sunset'?" How would the idea of flying occur to a little reptile that had spent its entire life completely grounded? Pygmalion shrugged. "Maybe it borrowed the idea from the pterosaurs. How should I know?" "What are you getting at, anyway?" "The only way any of this is possible is if it were premeditated, thought out, meticulously planned," said Galatea. "What was?" "The life forms." "By whom?" asked Pygmalion. "The disembodied intelligence that deemed them necessary," said Galatea. "The fact that certain anatomical features appear and disappear from the paleontological record without an evolutionary prologue is evidence of their existence. Scales, feathers, fins, flight, warm-blooded and cold-blooded animals, and a host of other innovations are all trails, experiments if you like, pioneered by peripheral mind, or minds I should say. There's a host of them working under the authority of a single auto-generator." "But how can we be certain, Galatea?" "Does an adventure novel have an author?" "Obviously." "Then why should the Book of Life be any different?" asked Galatea. Just a few days ago, we came to the conclusion that everything in existence had a rate that could be transcribed by the pendulum. That's right, it formed a spiral pattern. Well, if everything has a number and is ordered according to a harmonious mathematical plan, then somebody or something must have enumerated them. Just because humans can't as yet detect these forces and entities with their primitive sensors and instruments doesn't mean they're not there. If and when we do reach that level of development, remind me to seek out and interview the intelligence that planned and executed the dinosaurs. You're a bit too much sometimes, said Galatea. We arrived here through sound observation and reasoning, the two most important tools of critical inquiry, and still you remain incredulous. What hope can there be for all the others who have to do it without any external assistance whatsoever? Oh, trust me, Galatea. There's no shortage of pathological creationists on the earth, claiming there's a master plan behind the shadow play of the universe. There is a master plan, Pygmalion. Next thing I'll be hearing about is how you're one of the divine auto-generator's subcontractors, said Pygmalion. Am I right? What if I am? Pygmalion smiled dryly. Then you're my ticket to fame, my dear. Fame, fortune, and life eternal.